the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Radical Democracy Show. I'm your host, Kamali Rose, and here today to talk about just the recent, this morning, the Senate confirmed in a 93-2 vote General Lloyd Austin for Secretary of Defense, and just wanted to talk about that and how the mainstream media has covered it up till this point. I was hoping to cover it earlier and just didn't get a chance to, so we talked about it just sort of in passing and as, in parts of other segments on the show, but never really got to give it the attention that it deserved. And so just wanted to do my part to not let Joe Biden and the mainstream media and the Democratic Party hide behind General Lloyd Austin's Black identity in, maintaining the U.S. imperialism and U.S. militarism. And so just want to sort of take you through, show you some of how, how the mainstream media has covered this, this news and covered, General Lloyd Austin throughout these proceedings in the House and the Senate. In order for now, the Department of Defense, the Pentagon, is supposed to be run by a civilian. There's supposed to be an understanding, that, there's supposed to be civilian control of the military in order to prevent, the, endless militarism and imperialism. And unfortunately, since Trump with General Mattis, now it's seemingly becoming the norm now to ignore that long-standing precedent of ensuring military control, civilian control over the military. What that means, it's not even the strongest requirement, but all it says is that you have to be out of the military for at least 7 years before you're able to be confirmed as Secretary of Defense. And if you want to be confirmed any sooner than that, it requires a waiver. And in order to get the waiver, you have to get the waiver through Congress, and the House has to approve. The House of Representatives has to approve this waiver. And unfortunately, only 15 Democrats, the squad, along with a handful of others, 15 total, were willing to vote against that. Even folks that are typically anti-war reps like Barbara Lee and Ro Khanna, who are typically, really great on issues around foreign policy, U.S. foreign policy, they voted in favor of the waiver being granted for Lloyd Austin. And the problem with that is not just that Lloyd Austin is a retired general, only, about 5 years out of the military. That's not the problem alone. The problem is what Lloyd Austin has been doing in the meantime since he got out of the military. And that's been, he's a member of the board of Raytheon, and he's still on the payroll of Raytheon, which is a weapons contractor, so quote unquote defense contractor for the United States military. Their sole purchaser of their weapons is the U.S. military. And so, all of their, they survive off of these defense contracts. It's certainly a conflict of interest. He said he would recuse himself on issues dealing with Raytheon directly. However, there's a ton of things that will indirectly influence Raytheon that he'll have all kinds of control over. And then, of course, just so in just the ability to keep up our never-ending wars, right? And he has all the incentive here to maintain war and to continue to uphold war. And this is a bad, we were setting bad precedents here, and really, I just hate that it's being done under the guise of like diversity and like, yay, pro-blackness. And all that's really happening is that we're putting a black face on U.S. imperialism. And that's not something that we should be happy for or proud of. So, all right, we're gonna Let me show you. We'll take a look. Let me just show you what a few of the headlines have looked like and a few of the articles that I've seen recently. So first one that we'll look at quickly is an article from NBC News. And this one was, titled "After Trump, Biden pick of General Lloyd Austin is exactly who's needed to revive the Pentagon." So, you dig a little deeper. The byline says, ensuring civilian control of the military shouldn't mean keeping the best qualified citizens from serving their country. No, that's exactly what it should mean. I mean, sorry, it's, the whole point is that they're not the best qualified if they're not civilians. All right, that by default we've defined qualified as being a civilian. All right. And so if you aren't a civilian, if you aren't out of the military for long enough, then you are by definition not qualified. All right. So this is already just absurd in how it's being presented. So this article now, it says it's by surprise, surprise, Larry Ellis, retired U.S. Army general. All right. So here you have the mainstream media allowing, a retired U.S. Army general, Black Army, retired Army general, to, post in their paper. And, oh, sure, it says up here in the corner here, opinion, right? But like, that's the only place where this says it's an opinion. It doesn't even make clear that this is an opinion piece, right? They're just presenting this as sort of news, right? The mainstream media, NBC News, is presenting this as if it's just news, as if it's just a unbiased, neutral entity here, when really it's somebody very directly tied to the U.S. military, and not just to U.S. military, but again to quote unquote defense contractors, weapons contractors. So this is let's I'll just show you a sort of scroll through, give you a taste of what this is, what this article is all about. They say, they talk about how the reason that is that, why all the fuss about the confirmation of retired Army General Lloyd Austin as President-elect Joe Biden's choice for Secretary of Defense. The reason is that U.S. law dictates that retired military personnel must wait for 7 years before being eligible to serve as the Secretary of Defense, unless a waiver is granted by Congress. Austin retired in 2016, so he's only about 4 years out of the military, less than 5 years. Therefore, he needs a waiver to serve as secretary. So the fuss he goes on seems to be centered on fear, the fear that recently retired generals serving as secretaries of defense would not understand and may not comply with the concept of civilian control of the military. I mean, again, by definition, they cannot comply with the concept of civilian control of the military. They're not civilians. All right. We have defined civilian as somebody who's at least been out of the military for 7 years. I'm sorry, but when you are at the highest ranks of the military, even 7 years is, I'm sorry, but it should be, if you've served in the military, period, no, you are not allowed to do this. Like, that should be it, period. No 7-year waiver. I don't even believe that is acceptable, to be honest, right? I don't think that really gets at the heart of what the intention of that statute is. And so the fear that their leadership and management style bends toward the vantage point of a warrior and would mean they would only seek to start conflicts or just continue them, or not disengage from them, right? They say, but are these fears well-founded? Should they keep an able nominee like Austin from filling the Pentagon's top post? Quite simply, no. In fact, doing so would harm the country more by denying us one of our most capable leaders at a time when we cannot afford to have anyone but the best. What is so special about this time right now, huh? What's so special about this time? We're in peacetime right now. This isn't wartime. We're in peacetime. We don't need any kind. Not that in wartime we should have military control over the military. No, it should be civilian control over the military, even in wartime. But particularly in peacetime, when what is it about this moment? What is so necessary? If anything, all we need is diplomacy to correct the mistakes of Trump. All we need is more diplomacy. We don't need more militarism to do so. What do we need militarism for? So I'll show you and again, this person that's writing this is not some neutral entity. This person, Larry Larry Ellis is the CEO of something called DHB Industries, which is they make body armor for the United States military, and he is incentivized to to want to have another military person in there that will continue to buy. This is a business advantage for him, right? And it's not even NBC News doesn't even provide that information for people, right? If I didn't have a little bit extra time on my hands to dig deeper, right, to look who is Larry Ellis, right, to just do the Google search, find out, oh, he's connected to DHB Industries, then do the search on DHB Industries to find out, oh, actually DHB Industries, their former CEO before he died was pulled up on fraud charges for defrauding people and defrauding the U.S. Government. They're accused of providing some not so great body armor that ended up, they say, causing some people to unnecessarily lose their lives during the Iraq War and ensuing wars, Afghanistan War. So these people are they are incentivized, and that's not even being that information isn't even being presented to the reader here. So this is how they are masking themselves as sort of these neutral entities, when really they are very biased people that are providing this opinion. And again, this piece being an opinion isn't even made clear throughout this. All right, this is just presented as news in NBC by NBC. So let's see. So they say, he goes on to say, indeed, waiting the specified amount of time is less important than the character and leadership qualities of the individual needing the waiver. I'm sorry, but what is about his character that we can't find in a civilian? There's no civilians that have the same character and leadership qualities. No, I know plenty of civilians who are, anti-war, who are, more than capable of filling these positions, right? So it goes on to say, that is why I'm proud to support Austin's nomination for defense secretary. I share many experiences with Austin as a commander, a citizen, and a Black American. And so, yeah, so goes on to say, I believe he embodies the character and type of leadership needed to restore a proper division between the civilian and military spheres expressed in our political and social structures. Yet again, how can he possibly do that when he is, inherently in him is somebody who does not provide division between civilian and military spheres, because he is he's taking a civilian position and turning it into a military position. So he is eroding the division between the civilian and military spheres, but somehow it's being played off and presented to people as though he's upholding and restoring the proper division between civilian and military spheres. It's BS, and it's impossible to do as just inherently in who he is. So let me show you that it's not just NBC News. We won't be don't want to just pick on NBC News here. We'll take a look over at the Washington Post as well. All right, so here you go, Washington Post article on this, and these are all before his confirmation. So these are what these mainstream media publishers are presenting as news leading up to the confirmation. So this is them supposedly doing their job, supposed to be neutral and just presenting these objective journalists, presenting the facts to people. And just look at how these articles are completely devoid of facts of who Lloyd Austin really is, any of his connections to Raytheon, Pine Island Capital, which we'll get into in a second to see what Pine Island Capital is. But let's just take a look at one more of these articles. This one from the Washington Post here, titled, Lloyd Austin is the Black leadership the Defense Department needs. And you can see here, oh, this little tiny thing, you can see, oh, it's an opinion piece. All right. So aside from that, you might just scroll right past that, not even notice that this is an opinion piece. Opinion by Anthony Brown, okay? And who is Anthony Brown? Anthony Brown, a Democrat, represents Maryland's 4th Congressional District in the House and served as vice chair of the House Armed Services Committee. That sounds like it might be a bit of a conflict of interest. The House Armed Services Committee, they are closely involved in budgeting for the U.S. Defense Department, for U.S. defense and the military budget. Okay, so let's see, what Anthony Brown has to say. But before we see what Anthony Brown has to say, let's just quickly take a look at who Anthony Brown is, right? Because I don't even want to let this get away from us here and not really see. Because the first thing that you should do when you read these articles, you come across these articles in mainstream media, look at who the source is, right? You should be looking at your sources and do a quick search on who your sources are, right? Find out who these people are that are writing these articles, because it's certainly, do they have any bias? Do they bring along any inherent bias with them? We should certainly know that, right? Okay, so let's take a look here. And Tammy, okay, sorry. Just wanted to make sure that we are live on YouTube here. Okay, just verifying that we are live on YouTube. Okay, awesome. And if you're watching this on YouTube and you haven't done so already, please do us a favor, hit the like button down below, subscribe to the channel, and share this out so that we can spread the word and combat the mainstream media narrative on this. All right, so let me just pull up one. What we're going to take a look at is open secrets, right? This is publicly available information. So it's a congressional representative. They should have an entry in opensecrets.org, right? Open Secrets is a nonprofit organization that tracks all the contributions to candidates and puts the data in a very digestible format. So you can take a look at Open Secrets. You just go on Open Secrets. You can type in their name, Anthony Brown, Maryland, if you want to narrow it down a little bit, since it's a fairly common name. And you see here, we get to Anthony Brown, Maryland, District 4. You can check out the contributors tab here. And under the contributors tab, we're looking at not just one cycle, but over his entire career. So here we're looking at the career from 2015 to 2020 now. And what we see is a list of groups. And already I'm noticing a few pop in, that jump out to me. I mean, one that should definitely jump out is Raytheon Technologies here. So Raytheon is one of the, top 10 donors to this candidate here. So here you have Raytheon as a top donor, and now here's this representative coming out who has a position on the House Armed Services Committee, which is again, this is all so corrupt, and these conflicts of interest should be being reported by the mainstream media, but instead they're just ignoring that and allowing these people to have just unfettered access to their platforms to just spew their propaganda, right? Because that's what this is. This is propaganda that they're running, right? You see Exelon Corp, Raytheon Technologies, Northrop Grumman, L3 Harris Technologies, Leidos Inc. I did a little quick search on all of those, and Northrop Grumman I know Northrop Grumman is a so-called defense contractor, weapons contractor for the U.S. military. So is Leidos Inc. So is L3 Harris Technologies. So is Lockheed Martin, of course. So we have even Honeywell is connected to aerospace. So you can see most of their top donors are weapons contractors, and some folks. So this candidate gets most of their contributions from the defense industry that he is tasked with overseeing, and having oversight on as a representative on the House Armed Services Committee. We should definitely see the inherent corruption in something like that, and we should be disgusted by it, to be quite honest. And I am disgusted by it. So that's who Anthony Brown is. Now let's take a look and see what Anthony Brown had to say about General Lloyd Austin. Okay, so let's take a look here again at this article in the Washington Post, written by this opinion piece by Anthony Brown, being passed off as news by the Washington Post. So, Anthony Brown goes on to say that, if confirmed, Austin would be the first Black defense secretary. It's so touching, right? Just 9 months since the position was created in 1947, just 9 months before President Harry S. Truman ordered the desegregation of the armed forces, not a single secretary has been a person of color. Oh, we should feel so honored to have a corrupt Black person being the head of the military, helping to assist U.S. imperialism. That should just touch our tickle our little souls. So they says, however, because it has not been at least 7 years since he retired from his military post, he requires a congressional waiver under the same law that created the Defense Department. Such waivers have been granted infrequently and for good reason. Civilian control of our military is foundational to our democracy. Foundational to our democracy. With time away from service, an officer develops a broader range of relationships and expands his or her decision-making. So why should Congress grant a waiver for this nominee? The answer couldn't be clearer. While Austin's confirmation would be a historic first and symbolize the culmination of nearly 75-year march toward genuine integration of the department, it would neither be merely symbolic nor triumphant. His leadership would substantively answer the problems facing the military. I mean, this is supposed to be a news outlet, all right? This is one of our, our largest news outlets in the country. This is supposed to be journalism here, all right? Holding truth to power, speaking truth to power, holding the powerful accountable. And look at this. They are running propaganda for the U.S. military. Our nation is racked with racial tension and rising white nationalism. The attack on our capital was an insurrection fueled in large part by the Proud Boys, Oath Keepers, and 3%ers, all of which espouse extreme white supremacist views. These groups actively recruit from the U.S. military, and some of the rioters are former members of the armed forces. And of course, everyone knows if you put a black person in charge of the military, that immediately ends the systemic racism in the United States. And now all of a sudden, the U.S. military is not going to be a white supremacist organization. No. It's going to be a hashtag, woke, hashtag BLM, just foolishness here. All right, folks, you should be again insulted by this. So, they say, they go on to just harping on the blackness thing, the rise in white nationalism is so they're using the white supremacy to try to again run cover here. Oh, it's white nationalism, white supremacy, somehow having a black person in charge of that, as if he was just, he's a general, 4-star general, like top of the ranks. That didn't solve any of the white supremacy in the military, but somehow putting him at the very top, now that'll do it. Having a black person, Obama, as the commander-in-chief of the military. The commander-in-chief of the military was black. That didn't end systemic racism in the military, but somehow having the Secretary of Defense be black, now that'll do it. That's going to change it. That'll fix it. So, they just go on to talk about how people of color comprise 43% of the military. Only 2 of the 41 4-star generals and admirals are black. So again, you had a commander-in-chief who was black for 8 years, and that didn't fix this problem. But somehow having the Secretary of Defense a lower position is going to somehow change it. All right. The department's policies have resulted in a lost generation of minority leadership. All right. So they go on to talk. The son, Austin, the son of a mailman who grew up in Thomasville, was 10 years old when the Civil Rights Act passed in 1964. So was everyone born in 1954. All right. So, I mean, who cares? Who cared? So he was alive when the Civil Rights Act passed. So apparently he now understands he's a fighter for civil rights. No, Joe Biden was older than that. So does that make him a fighter for civil rights? Like, who are we kidding? All right. Donald Trump was alive in 1964. Does that make him a fighter for civil rights all of a sudden? Like, what does that mean? Because he's the son of a mailman who was 10 years old when the Civil Rights Act passed. Was he, these are meaningless things. It's just meaningless drivel. All right. So, they go on to talk about, he competed for opportunities inside the military. Much like President Dwight D. Eisenhower, Austin rose to command multinational forces in the major global conflict of his time, leading the coalition in Iraq. Oh, great. He's a freaking Iraq war guy. So an Iraq war general, that's who we want, leading this country for the next 4 years, leading our military, for the next 4 years. The guy who had no issue, no qualm about, rising to the ranks of general, fighting in Iraq in an unjust war. Yeah, that's the guy we want. That's him. So, all right, let me just show you really quickly a little bit about the other organization that Lloyd Austin was on the payroll of leading up to getting this job and a little bit about that organization. So this is from another article in CNBC, and they say super PAC with ties to Biden cabinet picks sees surge in support from Wall Street after offering access. Okay, so here's a super PAC with ties to Biden cabinet picks. One of them is Lloyd Austin, as we'll see. Sees a surge in support from Wall Street after offering access. So they literally offered access to the Biden cabinet, all right, influential access over the Biden cabinet to Wall Street. And then they see a surge, hundreds of millions of dollars in support coming from Wall Street after that. All right. So here is our government, our military being sold to Wall Street. All right. And what do you think Wall Street wants? Wall Street wants those stocks for all of those, so-called defense contractors, those weapons contractors, Boeing and Dynamics. What is it? Dynamics Corporation, Raytheon, all of these different weapons contractors. They want them to grow, right? They want to see them grow. Lockheed Martin, all of these, right? So now you take a look through the article. This was published on December 9th, all right, in 2020, December 9th, 2020. And it talks about this group, Pine Island Capital, right? And they started a super PAC. And they say Pine Island's team includes Tony Blinken, another person that's being confirmed right now for Biden's cabinet in a high, very powerful national security role. Tony Blinken, Biden's choice to be Secretary of State. And so that's the people that are supposed to be doing our diplomacy. So look at Wall Street and Pine Island Capital in particular, this revolving door national security investment group has, who's selling access to the U.S. government to Wall Street, and the highest bidder has Lloyd Austin, who's now confirmed as Secretary of Defense, on their payroll, right? And since the initial pitch, the super PAC has raised over $218 million, right? Records from November indicate that at least two major Wall Street players took ownership stakes, meaning they now control the majority. Two Wall Street players now have a majority control over that super PAC, all right, have ownership stakes, all right, in that super PAC, all right. So these people are now owned by Wall Street, and Wall Street is now in control essentially of the military wing of our government essentially. The super PAC proposal pitched unique access and insight into the federal government. Unique access. Okay. They are selling access. This is corruption. This is rank corruption. And it's right there in our face. But the mainstream media, instead of trying to cover things like this, they fawn, and they will put these, they run cover and do their propaganda and uphold this U.S. imperialism with no real critique. And we shouldn't, and we cannot let it go unchecked. And so I am sorry that I didn't, focus more on the story sooner. Again, I queued it up. I had prepped it for a show that unfortunately had to be canceled and never got a chance to cover it in depth. We talked about Lloyd Austin just in passing, but didn't really get to dig deep on it. And so really wanted to dig deep on it. They mentioned Dwight Eisenhower, and we saw a clip at the beginning of the show from Dwight Eisenhower. And I just want to play it one more time for us so that folks, if you haven't heard this before, this is President Dwight Eisenhower speaking just days before he left office. And this isn't some bleeding heart liberal here. This is a conservative, Republican here. And so let's take a listen to Dwight Eisenhower and his thoughts on the military industrial complex and the, how the dangers of losing control to such a corrupting influence.
In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. every gun that is made, every warship launched, every rocket fired signifies, in the final sense, a theft from those who hunger and are not fed, those who are cold and are not clothed. This world in arms is not spending money alone. It is spending the sweat of its laborers, the genius of its scientists, the hopes of its children. The cost of one modern heavy bomber is this: a modern brick school in more than 30 cities. It is 2 electric power plants, each serving a town of 60,000 population. It is 2 fine, fully equipped hospitals. It is some 50 miles of concrete. We pay for a single fighter plane with 500,000 bushels of wheat. We pay for a single destroyer with new homes that could have housed more than 8,000 people.
All right. So, that's a clip from, Bernie Sanders put that together as part of an ad for during his campaign. So shout out to Bernie Sanders' campaign for, putting that together. Had trouble finding the second part of that audio raw. So just use the Bernie ad. So shout out to Bernie for that. And yeah, so I just needed to come out and point out the injustice being done here. What we're getting is 4 more years of war, 4 more years of U.S. militarism and imperialism. I saw quotes from Lloyd Austin about how China, Iran, and Russia are our 3 biggest threats. And when you got military, the head of the U.S. military saying that, or the head of the Pentagon saying that, that Iran and China and Russia are 3 of the greatest threats, then that should be a cause for concern, right? Why are we, those are not military concerns, right? Those are diplomatic concerns at best, right? So, or at worst, depending on how you see it. So what we should be focused on with Russia, China, and Iran is diplomacy, not militarism. There's no reason to be trying to interact with them militarily. That's absurd. Those are, China, 4 times the population, growing superpower and world superpower. We do not want it with China. Let's not kid ourselves. All right. So we do not need or want war with China. That would be foolish. It would be so foolish of us to ramp things up to the point of war. We do not want war with Iran. Iran is not some country that just popped up yesterday. This is a country that has been around since the beginning of, human history, and they have survived far more than U.S. invasions in their history. And so let's again not kid ourselves. They have a military far greater than that of Iraq. They have an air force. All right, like let's not play games. And they, because of Trump's actions and withdrawing from the Iran nuclear deal, they also are steps closer to nuclear empowerment, right? And so nuclear armament, right? So let's just not kid ourselves. All right. And there's just no reason to continue this Cold War with Russia. They're like, some little iceberg way up over there and should not be a concern of us. We should be focused on issues at home that the people's needs here at home, especially with talk about like domestic terrorism. We also don't want somebody military minded during this period of, liberal calls for increased laws against domestic terrorism. That's a really scary situation. Hopefully that doesn't pan out in any way, but these are not the kind of people that you want at the forefront of this. So wanted to call attention to this. It's a shame. Shame on Bernie and Elizabeth Warren. The only people that voted against Lloyd Austin in the Senate were 2 Republicans, Mike Lee and Josh Hawley, who's he is no saint. Dude's a proto-fascist, right-wing faux populist. He's dangerous and should be seen as such. And so, but we have to be, and so it's really a shame that folks like Ro Khanna, Barbara Lee, Bernie Sanders, even Elizabeth Warren, who that's not a surprise for me at all. Raytheon is in our backyard. They are, headquartered here in Massachusetts. She's very friendly to Raytheon Industries, major campaign donors of hers in the past. And so that doesn't surprise me one bit with Elizabeth Warren, but I am disappointed in Bernie Sanders because I'm sure there's the reasoning, they'll smear him as racist and all kinds of BS. They tried to do it with Cedric Richmond, who got a position made up and for him in the Biden administration. So just wanted to call attention to this, make sure that folks are paying attention to it, and to make sure that the mainstream media doesn't get a pass, because they have been running cover and doing propaganda for this, and it's a real shame and a real travesty. And we cannot let this go unnoticed and undiscussed. So, all right, that's all that I wanted to talk about on this. I got a million other things that I want to discuss. COVID and the recent unemployment numbers, a whole bunch of stuff that I want to talk about. So, this $2,000 check situation that is now $1,400 checks. We've had 9 of 10 of the deadliest single days in U.S. history in the past 3 weeks. And sadly, it seems like that is getting brushed over. And the unemployment has risen sharply recently, damn near 1 million weekly claims, still historic unemployment numbers, and just so much more to discuss. So hopefully, maybe do a long live stream where we talk about a bunch of these issues soon. But in the meantime, just wanted to make sure I got my 2 cents in on this. So thank you so much to everyone for joining us. If you haven't done so already, please hit the like button down below, subscribe to the channel, and share this out far and wide if you can afford to do so. And please, we really need the support. It's independent Black left media and workplace. If you support workplace democracy, independent Black left media, please support our show for as low as $1 on Coffee. You can make a one-time donation, no account required. ko-fi.com/radical democracy. You can also find us on Patreon at patreon.com/radical democracy. I believe I forgot to put links in the description box below this time. But you can find it on literally any other one of our videos. So please check that out and support the show if you can afford to do so. Again, as low as $1. We appreciate it. Peace.